Story 1. The Rain Shadow. Elliot Finch had been hiking the Appalachian Trail through Vermont for 5 days when the rain started. Not unusual for late May, when spring storms rolled through the Green Mountains with predictable frequency. He'd checked the forecast before starting this section and expected intermittent showers. What he got was a deluge. The rain began at noon on day 5, heavy drops that quickly soaked through his rain jacket. Elliot pushed forward, knowing the next shelter was only 4 miles ahead. He'd dry out there, wait for the storm to pass, maybe share the space with other hikers seeking refuge. But as he hiked, Elliot noticed something odd. The rain was falling everywhere except directly on the trail. About 3 feet to either side, the rain pounded the forest floor, creating streams and puddles. But the trail itself remained dry. Not just less wet, but completely dry, like an invisible umbrella extended over the path. Elliot stopped and held out his hand. Rain hit his palm when he extended it off the trail. He pulled his hand back over the path and the rain stopped reaching it. There was a boundary, precise and absolute, protecting the trail from precipitation. He knelt down and examined the ground. The trail surface was bone dry, dusty even, while inches away the soil was saturated and muddy. Elliot stood at the edge of the dry zone and watched rain fall in sheets just beyond the invisible barrier. This wasn't natural. Weather didn't work this way. Rain didn't avoid specific areas with geometric precision. Elliot pulled out his phone to document it, but his camera showed rain falling normally, covering everything. The lens couldn't capture what his eyes clearly saw. He continued hiking, disturbed but trying to rationalize. Maybe it was an optical illusion, some trick of perception caused by fatigue. But the evidence was undeniable. His boots stayed dry. The trail remained dust-covered despite the downpour hammering everything around it. At the shelter, Elliot found 2 other hikers already settled in. A young woman named Kate and an older man named Vincent. Both were soaked, their gear dripping, puddles forming under their packs. "Hell of a storm," Kate said, wringing out her shirt. Elliot looked at his own clothes. Completely dry. He glanced down at his boots. No mud, no water. "Yeah, really came down." Vincent was staring at him. "How are you dry?" "What? You just hiked through the same storm we did. You should be soaked, but you're completely dry." Elliot looked down at himself, then at the other hikers. They were drenched, their clothes dark with water, their skin glistening with rain. Elliot's gear showed no signs of moisture. Even his pack, which should have been saturated, was dry. "I don't understand," Elliot said. "The rain wasn't hitting the trail. There was like a barrier over it." Kate and Vincent exchanged glances. Kate spoke, carefully. "The rain was hitting everything. We were walking in it for 2 hours. It was pouring on the trail." "No, the trail was dry. The rain was falling next to it, but not on it." Vincent pulled out his phone and showed Elliot photos he'd taken during the hike. The images showed rain falling on the trail, puddles forming, the path muddy and slick. Elliot looked at the timestamps. Vincent had taken these photos during the same 2 hours Elliot had been hiking. "That's not what I saw," Elliot insisted. "The trail was completely dry." "Then how are we wet and you're not?" Elliot had no answer. The 3 of them sat in uncomfortable silence as the rain continued outside the shelter. Elliot watched it fall, confirming what his eyes told him. Rain was hitting the forest, the shelter roof, everything. Except when he looked at the trail itself, he saw only dryness. Kate finally said, "My grandfather told me stories about the rain shadow. Old hiking legend from the 1970s. He said some people hike in a bubble protected from weather. They see conditions differently than everyone else. He called them shadow hikers." "That's just folklore," Vincent said. "Maybe. But Elliot's dry and we're not. Something's different about how he's experiencing this storm. That night, Elliot couldn't sleep. He kept thinking about the dry trail, the way rain had fallen everywhere except where he walked. In the morning, the storm had passed. Elliot packed up and started hiking with Kate and Vincent, grateful for the company. The day was clear and sunny. They hiked together for 3 hours, making good time on the muddy trail. Except Elliot's trail wasn't muddy. Everywhere he stepped, the ground was dry and firm. He could see Kate and Vincent struggling through mud, their boots squelching, their pace slow. But Elliot walked on dry ground. Kate noticed first. "You're not leaving footprints." Elliot looked behind him. The trail showed Kate's and Vincent's boot prints clearly impressed in the mud. Between their tracks, where Elliot had walked, there were no prints. The mud showed no disturbance, as if Elliot weighed nothing or wasn't really there. Vincent stopped hiking. "What the hell is going on?" Elliot knelt and pressed his hand into the mud beside the trail. His hand left a clear impression. But when he stood on the trail, his boots left nothing. He jumped up and down, no prints. "I'm not in the rain," Elliot said slowly. "I'm not in the mud, I'm somewhere else. I'm hiking a different version of the trail." Kate backed away from him. "That's insane. Look at the evidence. I'm experiencing different weather, different trail conditions. I'm walking the same path as you, but in a different state." "A rain shadow." Vincent pulled out his GPS. "Check your position." All three of them compared GPS coordinates. Kate and Vincent showed identical positions. Elliot's device showed him about 30 feet off the trail in the forest, but he was clearly standing on the trail next to them. "Your GPS thinks you're not on the trail," Vincent said. "It thinks you're in the woods." Elliot checked his tracking history. For the past 5 days, his GPS showed him hiking parallel to the AT, never actually on it, about 30 feet offset, following a path that didn't exist on any map. But Elliot had been on the White Blaze Trail the entire time. He'd followed the markers, used the shelters, seen the mile markers. Kate had a theory. What if there are multiple versions of the trail, different layers, like parallel dimensions? Most people hike the normal one, where weather affects them and they leave footprints. But some people slip into a shadow version. Different conditions, different physics. How would that even happen? Vincent asked. "I don't know. Maybe it's random. Maybe it's something about the person, but if Elliot's in a rain shadow, he's hiking a trail that's similar but not identical to ours." They decided to test it. They found a creek crossing swollen from the recent rain. Kate and Vincent waded through, the water reaching their knees. Elliot approached the same crossing. To him, it was barely a trickle, maybe 2 inches deep. He walked across easily while Kate and Vincent struggled through high water 30 feet away. "Different trail," Elliot confirmed. "Same location, different conditions." Over the next 2 days, the differences became more pronounced. Elliot hiked through perfect weather while Kate and Vincent endured rain and cold. Elliot's trail was smooth and well-maintained while they struggled over roots and rocks. Elliot made 15-mile days easily while they barely managed 10. On day 8, they reached a road crossing where they'd planned to resupply. Kate and Vincent saw a small town with a general store. Elliot saw nothing, just forest and the trail continuing into the woods. His GPS showed him miles from any town. "It's right there," Kate insisted, pointing at buildings Elliot couldn't see. "I see forest." Vincent waved from in front of a store that, to Elliot, didn't exist. Elliot walked toward where Vincent stood. His companion appeared to be standing in the middle of the woods. Elliot reached out and felt something solid where nothing was visible. A wall? He was touching the store, but he couldn't see it. "The rain shadow is getting worse," Kate said. "You're not just protected from weather anymore, you're separating from our reality completely." Elliot felt panic rising. How do I get back? I don't know. My grandfather's stories never explained that part. The shadow hikers just disappeared. People would be hiking with them, then the shadow hiker would fade out, become less visible, and eventually vanish entirely. That's not comforting. I'm sorry, but if you're in a rain shadow, you're on a different trail now. It might look similar, but it's not the same one we're on. And the longer you stay in it, the further you drift from our version. Elliot tried everything to return to the normal trail. He deliberately stepped off the white blazes, bushwhacked through the forest, even tried hiking backward. Nothing worked. When he returned to the trail, he was still in the shadow version. Dry ground, perfect weather, no towns, no other hikers. Kate and Vincent agreed to hike with him as long as they could still see him. But by day 10, Elliot was becoming translucent. Kate said he looked like a ghost, barely visible, flickering in and out. Vincent could only see him in peripheral vision. Direct eye contact made Elliot disappear entirely. On day 11, they lost him. Kate and Vincent were hiking together, looking back periodically to check on Elliot. During one of those checks, he wasn't there anymore. They backtracked, called out, searched for hours. Elliot was gone. From Elliot's perspective, Kate and Vincent simply faded away. One moment they were ahead of him on the trail, the next they were gone. He called out but heard nothing. His GPS showed him alone in the forest, following a trail that no map acknowledged. Elliot continued hiking, hoping to encounter other hikers or reach a town. But the rain shadow trail was empty. He saw no one. His GPS showed him making progress north, but the landmarks didn't match his maps. Mountains that should exist weren't there. Rivers flowed in wrong directions. The trail continued, white blazes visible, shelters appearing at regular intervals, but everything was slightly wrong. Food was his first concern. Elliot's supplies were running low, and there were no towns in his version of the trail. But he found that in the rain shadow he didn't get hungry. Days passed without him eating, and he felt fine. His body didn't need food or water. He was sustained by whatever physics governed this shadow version. Weeks blurred together. Elliot hiked continuously, covering massive miles without fatigue. His GPS tracked hundreds of miles, but the trail never ended. He passed landmarks that should mark progress toward Maine, but they appeared in wrong order or not at all. Other shadow hikers appeared occasionally. Translucent figures, barely visible, hiking their own rain shadow trails. Elliot tried to communicate with them, but they couldn't hear him. Each shadow hiker existed in their own separate layer, invisible and inaudible to the others. Elliot found journals in shadow trail shelters, entries from hikers who'd slipped into rain shadows decades ago. One dated from 1978 described the same experience. The hiker had been in the rain shadow for 3 years, unable to return to the normal trail, hiking endlessly through a version of the AT that never ended. The most recent entry was from 2019. A hiker named Marcus Chen wrote, "Day 847 in the shadow, I can't find the exit. The trail goes on forever. I don't age, don't get hungry, don't sleep anymore. I just hike. If you're reading this, you're probably stuck too. I'm sorry." Elliot added his own entry. Day 62, still searching for the way out. To anyone who finds this, don't trust the rain shadow. If the rain stops hitting you, get off the trail immediately. Don't stay on a path that protects you from weather. That protection is a trap. He's still hiking. His GPS has tracked over 8,000 miles, but he hasn't reached Katahdin. The trail in his rain shadow loops somehow, or extends infinitely, or exists outside normal geography. Elliot passes the same landmarks repeatedly, but from different angles. Mountains he climbed appear again miles later. Shelters he slept in show up in wrong locations. Sometimes he sees the normal trail. Brief glimpses through the veil separating the shadow from reality. He sees other hikers, solid and real, hiking through rain and mud, struggling with weather. They can't see him. Elliot waves and shouts, but he's invisible to them, existing in a layer they can't perceive. The rain never touches him. The trail is always dry under his feet. And Elliot hikes endlessly through a protected bubble, forever separated from the trail he meant to follow, lost in a rain shadow that has no exit. If you hike the AT and notice the rain avoiding the trail, leave immediately. Step off the path, get wet, embrace the storm, because the protection is a trap, and once you enter the rain shadow, you'll hike forever in perfect weather through a version of the trail that never ends. Story 2. The Shelter Log Future. Natalie Brennan always read shelter logs, the notebooks left at AT shelters filled with entries from hikers documenting their journeys, were one of her favorite parts of trail culture. Funny anecdotes, trail conditions, advice, philosophical musings, terrible jokes. She'd spent hours reading logs during her section hikes over the years. On June 3rd, Natalie arrived at Peck's Corner Shelter in the Great Smoky Mountains. She'd hiked 16 miles and was exhausted. The shelter was empty, which suited her fine. She hung her food bag, set up her sleeping pad, and reached for the shelter log. The notebook was worn, its pages filled with hundreds of entries. Natalie flipped to the most recent page and began reading. The last entry was dated June 5th, 2 days in the future. Natalie checked the date on her phone, June 3rd. She looked at the log entry again, June 5th, written clearly at the top. The entry read, "Rough day. Made it to Peck's Corner, but my knee is destroyed. Probably hiking out at Newfound Gap tomorrow. Trail name Sparrow." Natalie flipped back through the log. The entries were in chronological order, but they extended into the future. June 4th, June 5th, June 6th. All dated ahead of the current date, all describing events that hadn't happened yet. She found an entry dated June 3rd, earlier in the day. Arrived at Peck's Corner around 3 p.m., shelter empty. Storm moving in tonight. Trail name, Compass. Natalie had arrived at 5 p.m. The shelter had been empty, just as the entry described. She read the rest of the June 3rd entries. One mentioned a storm. Natalie checked her weather app, clear skies forecast, but the log insisted a storm was coming. At 8 p.m., thunder rumbled. By 9 p.m., heavy rain was pounding the shelter roof. The log had been correct. Natalie kept reading. An entry dated June 4th described a fallen tree blocking the trail 2 miles north of the shelter. Another entry from June 4th mentioned encountering a bear at a specific creek crossing. June 5th entries described trail conditions, shelter crowding, a hiker's knee injury. All of this was future information. Events that hadn't occurred yet, documented in a shelter log as if they'd already happened. Natalie couldn't sleep. She read through the entire log, finding entries dated weeks into the future. Some were mundane trail reports, others were disturbing. A June 12th entry read, "Found a hiker unconscious on the trail near Klingman's Dome. Called for help. They said she'd been missing for 3 days." Another entry, dated June 18th. "I don't know why I'm writing this. I'm not going to make it out. My leg is broken and I'm 2 miles from the nearest road. If someone finds this, I'm sorry I didn't try harder." Natalie photographed several pages of the log. In the morning, she packed quickly and hiked north. 2 miles from the shelter, she found the fallen tree exactly as described in the June 4th entry. It was massive, blocking the entire trail, forcing her to climb over. The tree looked freshly fallen, bark still tight, no weathering. But according to the log, this tree would fall on June 4th. Today was June 4th. Natalie examined the tree's base. It had been cut. Chainsaw marks were visible on the trunk. Someone had deliberately felled this tree across the trail and positioned it to look natural. Natalie continued hiking and reached the creek crossing mentioned in the log. She waited, watching for the bear. At 11:30 a.m., exactly when the log entry indicated, a black bear emerged from the forest and crossed the creek 30 feet from where Natalie stood. The log was predicting the future, or documenting it, or somehow entries were being written by hikers who existed ahead in time, describing events before they occurred. At the next shelter, Natalie checked the log immediately. Same thing. Entries dated into the future, describing events that hadn't happened yet. She flipped to today's date, June 4th, and found an entry written in handwriting she recognized as her own. June 4th, Peck's Corner log is showing future entries. I don't understand how this is possible. Testing by hiking to the next shelter. Trail name, Natalie. She hadn't written that entry. She was reading it for the first time. But it was her handwriting, her trail name, her exact thoughts. Someone or something had written what she would have written, documenting her actions before she took them. Natalie sat down hard on the shelter floor. Her hands were shaking. If the log contained entries she would write in the future, then her future was already determined. Her actions were predictable or already completed from some perspective outside linear time. She flipped ahead to June 5th and found another entry in her handwriting. June 5th. Tried to deviate from the log predictions, didn't work. Ended up at Cosby Knob as predicted. This is terrifying. Natalie looked at her maps. Cosby Knob Shelter was tomorrow's destination according to her itinerary, but she decided to change plans. She'd hike further or stop earlier, deliberately deviating from what the log predicted. She hiked hard on June 5th, pushing past Cosby Knob, intending to reach the next shelter. But at 4 p.m., her right ankle twisted on a root. Not badly, but enough to force her to stop. She limped back to Cosby Knob Shelter and set up camp. The log entry had been correct. She tried to deviate but ended up exactly where predicted. Natalie read June 6th entries with growing dread. Her handwriting appeared again. June 6th. Can't escape the predictions. The logs document everything before it happens. We're not hiking the trail. We're following a script that's already been written. Other entries from June 6th corroborated details. Weather conditions, trail encounters, shelter crowding, all describing tomorrow as if it had already occurred. Natalie found an entry from a hiker named Marcus, dated June 6th, describing a conversation he'd have with her about the predictive logs. On June 6th, Natalie hiked toward Tri-Corner Knob Shelter. At the lunch break spot predicted in the logs, she encountered Marcus. He was sitting on a rock, eating an energy bar, exactly as his log entry had described. "You're Natalie," he said before she could introduce herself. "How did you know?" "The logs. They said you'd arrive at 12:47 p.m. It's 12:46. He checked his watch. "And there, 12:47. They compared notes. Marcus had been noticing the predictive logs for 4 days. Every shelter log extended into the future. Every entry eventually came true. He tried to deviate, change his plans, hike different routes, but circumstances always forced him back to the predicted path. Injury, weather, trail closures. Something always happened to ensure the predictions were fulfilled. "It's like the trail has a script," Marcus said. "We think we're making choices, but we're not. We're following predetermined paths, and the logs document it all in advance." Natalie asked the obvious question. "Who's writing the future entries?" "We are. Or versions of us that exist slightly ahead in time. Or the trail itself is writing them, I don't know. But every entry eventually matches reality perfectly." They decided to test the system. The logs predicted they'd reach Tri-Corner Knob Shelter by 5 p.m. and camp there. Instead, they agreed to hike through the night, skip the shelter entirely, and break the prediction. They hiked until dark, then continued by headlamp. The trail was difficult at night, but they were determined. At 11 p.m., 6 hours past the predicted shelter arrival, they stopped for a break. They'd successfully deviated from the script. But when Natalie checked her GPS, she realized they'd been hiking in a loop. Despite following white blazes, despite moving steadily north according to their compasses, they'd somehow circled back. They were standing at Tri-Corner Knob Shelter. Their packs were already there, set up as if they'd arrived hours ago. Marcus checked the shelter log. An entry in his handwriting, dated June 6th. Arrived at Tri-Corner Knob at 5 p.m. as predicted. Tried to hike through the night to break the predictions. Ended up here anyway by 11 p.m. The trail won't let us deviate. He hadn't written that entry. Neither had Natalie written the one in her handwriting. But the entries described exactly what had happened, including their failed attempt to break the pattern. Over the next week, Natalie and Marcus became obsessed with the predictive logs. They read every future entry, trying to find one they could prevent. A hiker injured on June 12th. Could they warn her? They hiked fast and reached the predicted injury location. But the hiker, a woman named Sarah, had already been injured. She'd fallen at the exact time predicted, in the exact manner described. The logs were perfectly accurate. Every prediction came true. Weather, encounters, injuries, conversations, even thoughts. Hikers would find their own future journal entries describing internal monologues they hadn't experienced yet, but would think in precise detail when the predicted date arrived. Natalie found an entry dated June 18th that disturbed her. It was written in Marcus's handwriting. June 18th. Natalie disappeared last night. We were camping at Davenport Gap and she was gone at dawn. No sign of her. Search starting today. She showed it to Marcus. His face went pale. That's 4 days from now. The logs haven't been wrong yet. So in 4 days you're going to disappear? Natalie flipped ahead to June 19th and 20th. No entries in her handwriting. She flipped through the entire rest of the notebook. Her entries stopped after June 17th. Marcus's entries continued through the end of June, documenting his search for her, interviews with rangers, his eventual decision to hike out alone. I'm not hiking to Davenport Gap, Natalie said. I'll exit the trail before then. The prediction can't come true if I'm not there. But on June 16th, Natalie twisted her ankle badly, enough that she needed to slow down. Instead of exiting at her planned road crossing, she limped on, trying to reach the next exit. By June 17th, her ankle was worse. She should have left the trail, but Marcus convinced her to rest one more day. They camped at Davenport Gap on the night of June 17th. Natalie couldn't sleep. She knew the prediction. She'd disappear sometime before dawn. She stayed awake, alert, watching the forest. Marcus kept a fire going, both of them determined to prevent the predicted disappearance. At 3 a.m., Natalie needed to use the bathroom. She walked 20 feet from camp, Marcus watching her with a flashlight. She stepped behind a tree. Marcus counted to 30, then called out. No response. He ran to the tree. Natalie was gone. Marcus searched for hours, then hiked out and reported her missing. Search teams covered the area for 3 days. They found no trace. Natalie had vanished completely, exactly as predicted in the shelter log. The logs continued documenting the future. Marcus kept hiking, kept reading predictions, kept watching hikers follow the script. A fall on June 23rd, a bear encounter on June 27th, a lightning strike on July 2nd. All predicted, all occurred exactly as written. Marcus reached the end of his section hike in mid-July. He'd been reading his own future for 6 weeks. The final prediction in the logs was dated July 15th in his handwriting. July 15th, Katahdin Summit. End of hike. I learned something on this trail. We don't choose our paths. We walk the roads already written. The logs proved it. Every step was predicted. Every choice was predetermined. I thought I had free will, but I was just reading my lines from a script someone else wrote. Trail name. Marcus. He summited Katahdin on July 15th and wrote that exact entry in the shelter log at Baxter Peak. Word for word, as predicted. He hadn't planned what to write. The words had simply come out, matching the prediction perfectly. Natalie was never found. Marcus reported the predictive logs to the Appalachian Trail Conservancy. They investigated and found nothing unusual. The shelter logs showed only current and past entries dated normally. The future entries Marcus and Natalie had photographed didn't appear in the physical logs when inspectors checked. But hikers still report finding entries dated ahead of the current date. Predictions that come true. Future events documented before they occur. Most people dismiss these as pranks or dating errors. But some hikers, the ones who read carefully, who pay attention to the patterns, realize the truth. The trail has already been walked. Every step, every decision, every thought has already occurred from some perspective outside time. The shelter logs are just windows into that completed timeline, showing us the future that's already passed. We think we're hiking the Appalachian Trail, making choices, writing our own stories, but we're just walking paths that were written before we were born, following scripts we can't change, documenting journeys that were finished before they began. Marcus doesn't hike anymore, but he keeps the photographs of the predictive log entries. June 18th in his handwriting, predicting Natalie's disappearance. He reads it sometimes, wondering if he could have changed anything. But the logs are never wrong. And somewhere in a shelter he hasn't visited yet, there's probably an entry describing this moment. His thoughts, his regrets, all documented in advance by a version of him that's already lived this and moved on. We're all just reading our own future entries, convinced we're writing them, never realizing the story was finished before we picked up the pen. Story 3. The Ascending Hunger. Trevor Jackson started his through hike in April, leaving Springer Mountain with 40 other hopeful hikers attempting the northbound journey. He'd trained for a year, lost 30 pounds, quit his job. This was his dream. 5 months hiking from Georgia to Maine, challenging himself physically and mentally. By Virginia, Trevor had settled into trail life. His trail legs were strong, his pack weight optimized, his daily routine efficient. He was averaging 18-mile days, feeling great, making friends at shelters each night. The hiker hunger had kicked in by week 3, that infamous phenomenon where through hikers develop seemingly bottomless appetites as their bodies burn 5,000 plus calories daily. Trevor ate constantly. Breakfast, snacks every hour while hiking, massive lunch, more snacks, huge dinner, midnight snacks. His food bag was always empty by the time he reached resupply towns. He'd go to all-you-can-eat buffets and shock the staff with how much food he could consume. This was normal. Every through hiker experienced it. But around mile 800, somewhere in central Virginia, Trevor noticed his hunger changing. It wasn't just a desire for calories anymore, it was specific. He craved elevation gain. The thought appeared fully formed in his mind during a climb up Cold Mountain. His legs burned, his heart pounded, and suddenly Trevor felt satisfaction. Not from reaching the summit, but from the climbing itself. Each upward step felt like eating. Each foot of elevation gain filled him like consuming food. Trevor dismissed it as strange trail thinking. The isolation and physical exhaustion created weird mental states. Hikers reported all kinds of odd thoughts after months in the woods. But the sensation persisted. Flat sections left him feeling hungry. Descents made him ravenous. Only climbing satisfied him. He started eating less food. Not intentionally, just naturally. His body seemed less interested in calories and more interested in elevation. Trevor would forget meals, hike all day on minimal food, then climb a mountain and feel completely satisfied. The upward motion fed him somehow. Other hikers noticed. At a shelter in the Shenandoah, a hiker named Crystal asked Trevor if he was okay. You barely ate dinner. That was like 400 calories. You just climbed 20 miles and gained 4,000 feet. Trevor realized she was right. He'd eaten almost nothing all day, but he felt full, stuffed even. Uncomfortably so, like after a huge Thanksgiving meal. But he'd only consumed a handful of trail mix and half a protein bar. "I'm not hungry," Trevor said. "I climbed a lot today." That's not how hunger works. But Trevor was certain it was how his hunger worked now. The climbing fed him. Each foot of elevation was like a calorie consumed. A 3,000-foot climb was equivalent to a massive meal. Flat sections left him starving, desperate for the next ascent. Trevor started seeking out elevation gain. He'd take alternate routes that involved more climbing. He'd add side trips to peaks, gaining extra elevation even when it meant longer hiking days. Other thru-hikers focused on efficient, low-gain routes. Trevor sought out the steepest, most vertical sections. His body changed. Despite eating less food, Trevor was gaining muscle mass. His legs became massive, his core strong. He looked like a mountaineer, not a thru-hiker. Most thru-hikers lost muscle and became lean. Trevor was building mass without adequate calorie intake. At a hostel in Pennsylvania, Trevor got on a scale. He'd gained 15 pounds since Virginia. Impossible. He was eating maybe 2,000 calories per day while burning 5,000 plus. He should be wasting away. Instead, he was getting stronger and heavier. The hostel owner, an old thru-hiker named Gene, looked at Trevor with concern. "You're an altitude eater." "A what?" "Rare thing. Happens to some hikers. Your body stops processing food normally and starts processing elevation. You're eating the mountains, boy, converting vertical gain into body mass." "That's impossible." Gene pulled out a worn journal filled with notes. "Been tracking weird trail phenomena for 30 years. Altitude eaters show up every few years. Always through hikers, always around mile 800. You start craving elevation, stop eating food, but you don't lose weight. You're metabolizing the climbing somehow." "How does that work?" "Don't know. Physics doesn't support it. But I've seen it happen. Talked to 12 altitude eaters over the years. All described the same thing. Hunger for elevation, satisfaction from climbing, weight gain despite minimal food intake." Trevor asked what happened to the other altitude eaters. Gene's expression darkened. "Most quit the trail. Get scared when they realize what's happening. Few kept hiking. I don't know what happened to them. They reach mountains higher than the AT offers and disappear. Last I heard, one went to the Himalayas, never came back." Trevor didn't quit. He was fascinated by his transformation. He started documenting it carefully. He'd eat exactly 1,500 calories per day, carefully, measured. He'd track his elevation gain and his weight. The correlation was clear. Every 100 feet of elevation gain added about 0.15 pounds to his body mass. He was converting altitude into weight at a consistent rate. But it wasn't just weight. Trevor was stronger. His endurance was superhuman. He'd climb 6,000 vertical feet in a day and feel energized, not exhausted. Other hikers struggled up the same mountains while Trevor bounded upward, each step feeding him, making him more powerful. The hunger grew more specific. Trevor started craving steeper grades. A gentle 5% incline did nothing for him. He needed 15%, 20% near vertical climbs. He'd leave the trail to scramble up rock faces, gaining elevation in any way possible. The steeper the climb, the more satisfying. By New Hampshire, Trevor was climbing sections that other hikers bypassed. The White Mountains were brutal, featuring some of the steepest terrain on the AT. Most hikers dreaded this section. Trevor was euphoric. He'd climb mountains twice, ascending and descending just to climb again. Each ascent fed his hunger. Other hikers began to fear him. Trevor's appearance had changed. His legs were grotesquely muscular, far beyond what seemed natural. His eyes had a manic quality. He talked obsessively about climbing, about elevation, about the need to go higher. He stopped sleeping at shelters, instead climbing mountains at night, gaining altitude in darkness. A hiker named Patricia reported him to the Trail Association, concerned Trevor was having a mental breakdown. But when rangers checked on him, Trevor was fine. Physically extraordinary, actually. His vital signs were perfect. His mental state, while unusual, wasn't dangerous. The rangers advised him to eat more but didn't force him off the trail. Trevor reached Mount Washington in late August, the highest peak in the Northeast, 6,288 feet. He climbed it from every direction, ascending all the trail approaches, consuming the elevation over and over. Each climb up Washington added several pounds to his frame. By the time he left the White Mountains, Trevor weighed 230 pounds. He'd started the trail at 175, the weight was all muscle. Trevor looked like a bodybuilder, but he'd built his mass through climbing, not through food or exercise. He was eating maybe 1,000 calories per day now, his hunger for food nearly gone. But his hunger for elevation was insatiable. Maine's 100-mile wilderness tested him. The section was remote and challenging, but relatively low elevation. Trevor felt starved. He'd climb every small hill multiple times, gaining a few hundred feet repeatedly, trying to satisfy his hunger. It wasn't enough. He needed big mountains, serious elevation. At Katahdin, the final mountain, Trevor felt both satisfaction and despair. The climb to Baxter Peak was steep and sustained, over 4,000 feet of gain. Trevor savored every step, feeling the elevation feed him, fill him, satisfy the terrible hunger. At the summit, he weighed himself on a portable scale he'd carried. 267 pounds. He'd gained 92 pounds during his through hike while eating minimal food. He'd consumed approximately 600,000 feet of elevation gain over 2,290 miles. His body had converted that vertical distance into mass somehow, violating every law of thermodynamics and biology. But Katahdin was the end. No more AT, no more climbing. Trevor stood at the summit and felt the hunger return immediately. The satisfaction of the final climb lasted only minutes before the craving started again. He needed more elevation, higher mountains, steeper climbs. Trevor didn't go home. He drove to Colorado and started climbing 14ers. Mount Elbert, Mount Massive, Long's Peak. Each gave him temporary satisfaction, but the hunger always returned. He was gaining weight rapidly now, his body converting elevation into mass at an accelerating rate. 280 pounds, 310 pounds, 340 pounds. All muscle, all power, all requiring more elevation to sustain. Other climbers reported seeing him on the mountains. A massively muscular man climbing alone, racing up peaks at impossible speeds, descending and immediately climbing again. Trevor was consuming mountains, his body metabolizing altitude, his hunger never satisfied. Trevor eventually went to the Himalayas. He hired guides to take him to Everest Base Camp, then continued alone to higher camps. His guides said he climbed without supplemental oxygen, without proper gear, driven by a hunger they couldn't understand. He'd gain the elevation from camp to camp, feel brief satisfaction, then immediately need more. The last confirmed sighting of Trevor Jackson was at 25,000 feet on Everest's northeast ridge. A climbing team passed him going up while they were descending. Trevor was moving fast, his massive frame somehow functioning at extreme altitude. He told them he needed to reach the summit, needed the elevation, needed to feed. He was never seen again. Search teams found no body, no gear, no evidence of where he'd gone. The theory is that Trevor reached the summit, consumed that final 4,000 feet of elevation, and felt his hunger return immediately. With nowhere higher to climb on Earth, with his body demanding more altitude than the planet could provide, Trevor simply ceased to exist. Starved for elevation that didn't exist, but some mountaineers report strange sightings. A massive figure climbing impossibly high, visible above Everest's summit, ascending into the stratosphere where no human can survive. Trevor eating his way up into space, his body converted into something that feeds on altitude, consuming elevation that exists only in atmosphere and void, climbing forever because the hunger never stops. The Appalachian Trail still produces altitude eaters, hikers around mile 800 who start craving elevation, who stop eating food, who gain weight from climbing. Most quit when they realize what's happening. A few continue, driven by hunger, consuming mountains, growing stronger and more desperate. They finish the AT and seek higher peaks, always needing more, always hungry. If you see a hiker eating almost nothing but climbing relentlessly, growing muscle mass despite insufficient calories, talking obsessively about elevation gain, walk away. They're being converted. Their bodies are learning to metabolize altitude instead of food. And once the conversion completes, they'll never be satisfied. They'll climb every mountain on Earth and still be starving. They'll ascend into air too thin to breathe, into cold too extreme to survive, because the hunger for elevation is infinite and the planet's vertical distance is finite. They'll climb until there's nowhere higher to go, and then they'll starve in the sky, consumed by a hunger that consumed them first. Story 4. The Trail Behind. Sophia Martinez had been hiking south to north for 6 weeks when she realized the trail behind her was disappearing. Not metaphorically, not in the sense of being far behind. Literally disappearing, ceasing to exist as she moved forward. It started as a suspicion. Sophia would look back down the trail occasionally, checking the terrain she'd covered, appreciating how far she'd come. Around mile 600 in Virginia, she noticed that the trail behind her looked different than she remembered. Blazes seemed to be in different positions. A distinctive rock formation she'd passed an hour earlier wasn't visible when she looked back. Sophia assumed she was misremembering. The trail all started to look similar after weeks of hiking. One rock formation looked like another. Blazes were everywhere. Her memory was probably conflating different sections. But on day 43, Sophia deliberately marked her path. She stacked 3 stones in a distinctive cairn at a trail junction, creating a marker she'd recognize. She hiked for 2 hours, then decided to backtrack to verify something on her map. When she returned to where the cairn should be, it was gone. Not scattered, not disturbed, simply not there. The trail junction existed, but her cairn had vanished. Sophia searched the area carefully. Maybe she'd misidentified the location. But her GPS confirmed this was the spot. She'd stacked the cairn here 2 hours ago. Now it was gone, and the ground showed no sign it had ever existed. She decided to test this systematically. Sophia tied a bright orange bandana to a tree branch directly on the trail. She photographed it, marked the GPS coordinates, and hiked north for 30 minutes. Then she turned around and hiked back. The bandana was gone. The tree was there, but the bandana wasn't. Sophia checked her GPS. Correct location. She looked at her photo. Same tree, same branch. But the bandana had disappeared. Sophia felt cold fear spreading through her chest. The trail was erasing itself behind her. Every step forward was somehow unmaking the path she'd walked. At the next shelter, Sophia told other hikers about her discovery. A thru hiker named Daniel listened carefully, then said, "I've noticed something similar. Landmarks I remember from a week ago, when I looked them up on my GPS history, they're not where I remember. And when I check trail maps, some features I swear I saw aren't marked." Another hiker, a woman named Leslie, added, "I tried to go back to a shelter I stayed at 3 days ago. I couldn't find it. The trail went past where it should be, but the shelter wasn't there. Just forest." They compared notes. All 3 had been hiking north. All 3 had noticed discontinuities with the trail behind them. Landmarks disappearing, shelters not existing in retrospect. the path seeming to unmake itself. Daniel suggested they hike south, deliberately backtracking to test the phenomenon. The three of them agreed. In the morning, they started hiking south, retracing their steps from the previous day. The trail felt wrong immediately. Blazes were in unexpected positions. Trail features appeared in the wrong order. Sophia checked her GPS tracking from yesterday. According to the device, they should be walking the exact same path, but the terrain didn't match. After 2 miles of southbound hiking, the trail simply ended. Not at a road crossing or trailhead. It just stopped. The white blazes ended at a tree, and beyond that tree was uncut forest. No path, no indication a trail had ever existed. The 3 hikers stood at the terminal blaze, staring into dense woods. "This is where we hiked yesterday," Sophia said, checking her GPS. "We walked through this section 16 hours ago. There was a trail here." Daniel pulled out his phone and checked his photos. He'd taken a picture at this exact GPS location yesterday. The photo showed clear trail, well-maintained path, white blazes visible ahead. They were standing at that spot now, but the trail shown in the photo didn't exist. Leslie had a theory. What if the Appalachian Trail isn't permanent? What if it only exists in the direction you're hiking? We're northbounders. The trail exists ahead of us, but behind us it unmakes itself. We're not hiking a path that already exists. We're creating it as we walk, and it disappears after we pass. "That's insane," Daniel said. "We're standing at the end of a trail that we hiked yesterday. The photo proves we were here, but the trail is gone. How is that not insane?" They tried to bushwhack south to find the trail they knew had existed. But the forest was impenetrable. Dense undergrowth, steep terrain, no indication humans had ever passed through. After an hour of struggling, they gave up and hiked north again. The trail reappeared. As they walked north, white blazes became visible. The path extended ahead of them. Trail features emerged from the forest. It was like the trail was being painted into existence just ahead of their position, then erased behind them. Sophia tested this by walking backward. She'd hike north normally, then turn around and walk backward, facing north but moving south. As long as she faced north, the trail remained visible behind her. The moment she faced south, the trail ahead, which was actually behind, disappeared into forest. "The trail exists in our direction of travel," Sophia said. "It's not about north or south, it's about the direction we intend to go. The trail manifests ahead of intention and unmanifests behind it." Over the next week, the 3 of them explored the implications. They tried to document the trail with photos and GPS data, but the records became unreliable. Photos showed trails that no longer existed. GPS tracks diverged from current terrain. The trail's past was being erased as they moved forward. They met other hikers and asked about southbound experiences. Southbounders reported the opposite phenomenon. For them, the trail ahead was disappearing while the trail behind was solid and permanent. Direction of travel determined which end of the trail existed. Sophia found old journals and shelter logs describing similar experiences. A 2007 entry read, "The trail I hiked last week doesn't exist anymore. I can't go back. I can only go forward. The AT is a one-way path that burns behind you as you walk." Another entry from 1998, "Don't try to reverse your hike. I attempted to go back and get gear I'd left at a shelter. The shelter was gone, the trail was gone. I almost got lost in the forest where I'd been hiking 2 days before." The phenomenon had been occurring for decades, but most hikers never noticed. They hiked in one direction, reached their destination, and left. They never tried to backtrack significantly, never tested whether the trail behind them still existed. Sophia, Daniel, and Leslie decided to continue north but document everything. They'd take extensive photos, GPS tracks, notes on every trail feature. Maybe the documentation would persist even if the physical trail didn't. But they found that documentation degraded over time. Photos would become corrupted, showing forest where trail had been. GPS tracks would develop gaps, with recorded positions appearing in impossible locations or open forest. Even their handwritten journal entries would fade, the ink disappearing from pages, leaving blank spaces where descriptions of past trail sections had been. The trail was erasing not just itself, but all records of itself. The past of the Appalachian Trail was being actively deleted, leaving only the present moment and the near future. Daniel quit the hike in Pennsylvania. He couldn't handle the existential implications. If the trail only existed in the moment, if the past was being erased, what did that mean for his own existence? Were his memories reliable? Did the person he'd been last week still exist, or had that version of himself been erased along with the trail he'd walked? Sophia and Leslie continued. They'd accepted the nature of the trail. It was a one-way path through existence, creating itself ahead and destroying itself behind. There was no going back, no revisiting, no return. Only forward progress through an endlessly manifesting present. In New Hampshire, they encountered a hiker who'd been on the trail for 7 years. A man named Carl who'd started a through hike in 2016 and never stopped. He'd reached Katahdin, then turned around and hiked south. Then reached Springer and turned north. He'd been oscillating back and forth, unable or unwilling to leave the trail. Carl explained his situation. "I can't leave. I tried. I reached Katahdin and hiked off the trail into Baxter State Park. But once I was off the AT, I couldn't remember how to get back to civilization. The roads disappeared. The park facilities weren't there. I was lost in forests that shouldn't exist. I had to climb back onto the AT or I'd have died. Once you're on this trail, it's the only reality that persists." He showed them his gear, 7-year-old equipment that looked brand new. No wear, no aging. Carl himself looked the same age as his driver's license photo from 2016. He hadn't aged. The trail didn't just erase its own past. It preserved its hikers in perpetual present, aging stopped, time frozen. "You're northbound," Carl said. "You'll reach Katahdin eventually, and when you do, you'll have a choice. Leave the trail and return to a world that continues aging, continues changing. Or stay on the trail, turn around, hike forever in a present that never becomes past. I couldn't leave. I've been hiking the same 2,390 miles for 7 years, and every step is fresh. I never run out of trail because the trail ahead is always being created." Sophia asked if he'd seen other permanent hikers. Carl said there were dozens. People who'd reached the end, tried to leave, found they couldn't, and resigned themselves to eternal hiking. The trail collected them, kept them, preserved them in amber of endless present. Leslie decided to exit at the next road crossing. She was terrified of becoming like Carl, trapped in a loop of trail that existed only in the moment. Sophia walked her to the road, said goodbye, and watched her hitch a ride. Leslie looked back once, waved, and disappeared into a car heading away from the trail. Sophia never saw her again. More specifically, Sophia couldn't remember her clearly after a week. Leslie's existence faded from memory like a trail section behind her had faded from reality. The past was being erased, and that included people who'd exited the present. Sophia reached Katahdin on October 12th. She stood at the summit sign, having completed a through hike. The trail behind her was gone, erased, all 2,190 miles existing only as vague memory and degraded documentation. Ahead was descent, exit, return to normal life. She tried to leave. Hiked down from Katahdin, followed signs to the park entrance, expected to reach her car. But the roads twisted impossibly. The signs pointed in contradictory directions, and after hours of walking, Sophia found herself back at Katahdin's base. The trail wouldn't let her leave. She tried for 3 days. Every attempt to exit led her in circles back to the trail. Finally, she accepted what Carl had told her. Once you're on the trail, it's the only reality that persists. Leaving means disappearing into a world that the trail has erased from your possible futures. Sophia turned around and started hiking south. The trail manifested ahead of her, white blazes appearing on trees, path extending into forest that hadn't been there moments before. Behind her, the northern sections began to erase, Katadine disappearing, the trail unmaking itself. She's still hiking. Reached Springer Mountain, turned around, headed north again. Met Carl several times. They hiked together occasionally. She's encountered 6 other permanent hikers, all trapped in the loop, all unable to leave. They hike in an eternal present, creating the trail with each step forward, erasing it with each step taken. Sophia has stopped aging. Her gear doesn't wear out. Food is always available at the next town, which manifests when needed and unmanifests after. The trail provides because the trail is all there is. If you through hike the Appalachian Trail and reach the end, leave immediately. Don't linger. Don't test the boundaries. Don't try to go back. The trail erases its own past and captures its hikers in eternal present. You'll hike forever in a reality that exists only in the moment, never aging, never changing, walking a path that creates itself ahead and destroys itself behind. 2,000 miles of present tense with no past to remember and no future to reach. Just walking forever on a trail that's always new because it's never old, because old doesn't exist here. Only the step you're taking now and the next white blaze ahead calling you forward into a present that never ends. Story 5. The Shelter Echo. Ryan Torres arrived at Partnership Shelter in Virginia around 4 p.m. on a Thursday in early July. He was exhausted from a 20-mile day and looking forward to rest. The shelter was empty when he arrived, which was unusual for prime thru-hiking season. Ryan didn't question his luck. He claimed a sleeping spot, set up his pad and sleeping bag, and hung his food bag. As he prepared dinner, Ryan heard voices approaching. 2 hikers emerged from the southbound trail, a man and a woman, both looking trail-worn and tired. They nodded to Ryan and claimed sleeping spots on the opposite side of the shelter. Ryan tried to make conversation, asking about trail conditions to the south. The man answered in detail, describing water sources and trail conditions for the next 50 miles. The woman added information about a storm system moving through the area. They were friendly and helpful. Exactly the kind of trail interaction Ryan had learned to appreciate. After dinner, the 3 of them sat around the shelter talking about their hikes. The man said his trail name was Compass. The woman was Sparrow. They'd been on the trail for 4 months, having started in Georgia in March. Ryan shared his own story, a month into his first thru-hike attempt. As darkness fell, they settled into their sleeping bags. Ryan lay awake for a while, watching stars through the shelter's open front. He heard Compass and Sparrow whispering to each other. Quiet conversation he couldn't make out. Eventually, Ryan fell asleep. In the morning, Ryan woke at dawn. Compass and Sparrow were already awake, packing their gear with practiced efficiency. They said goodbye to Ryan, hoisted their packs, and headed south on the trail. Ryan watched them disappear, then started his own morning routine. As Ryan packed, he noticed something odd. The sleeping spots where Compass and Sparrow had been showed no disturbance. The dust on the shelter floor was undisturbed. No boot prints, no compression marks from sleeping pads, no sign anyone had been there. Ryan checked his memory. He definitely talked to them. They'd shared the shelter, had conversations, given him detailed trail information. But the physical evidence suggested they'd never existed. He checked the shelter log, hoping to find their entries. The most recent entry was from 2 days ago. Nothing from yesterday or this morning. Compass and Sparrow hadn't signed in. Ryan tried to rationalize it. Maybe they'd slept outside the shelter structure. Maybe they were light sleepers who'd packed up without leaving marks. But that didn't explain the absence of boot prints or the missing log entries. He hiked on, disturbed but trying to dismiss the experience. At the next shelter that evening, Ryan asked other hikers if they'd seen a couple named Compass and Sparrow. No one had. A section hiker named Michelle checked her trail app, which tracked hikers' check-ins. No one with those trail names was registered on the AT. Maybe they were just day hikers, Michelle suggested. They said they'd been through hiking since March. Sometimes people make up stories. Or maybe you dreamed it? You said you were exhausted yesterday. Ryan pulled out his phone and checked his photos. He'd taken a picture during dinner that included part of the shelter. He zoomed in. The sleeping area where Compass and Sparrow should be was empty. The photo showed Ryan alone in the shelter, though he clearly remembered two people being there. Michelle looked at the photo. "You're alone in that picture." "They were there. I talked to them for hours." "I believe you think that, but the photo doesn't lie." Ryan hiked on, increasingly unsettled. 2 nights later at Pickle Branch Shelter, he encountered Compass and Sparrow again. They were sitting in the shelter when he arrived, looking exactly as they had before. Same gear, same appearance, same friendly demeanor. "Hey, Ryan," Compass said. "Good to see you again." Ryan stopped at the shelter entrance. "You remember me?" "Of course. Partnership Shelter 3 nights ago. You were asking about trail conditions south." "But you were heading south. How are you ahead of me now?" Compass and Sparrow exchanged a glance. Sparrow said, "We turned around. Decided to go northbound instead." "In 3 days you turned around past me and got ahead?" "We hiked big miles," Compass said. Ryan checked his GPS. He'd covered 65 miles in 3 days, pushing hard. For Compass and Sparrow to turn around and pass him, they'd have to have covered over 130 miles. Impossible, even for the fastest hikers. Ryan sat down carefully, maintaining distance. "Who are you really?" "We're through hikers, same as you." "No, I checked. No one with your trail names is registered. You don't leave physical traces, you don't appear in photos, you're not real." Compass looked sad. "We're real, just not in the way you think." Sparrow explained. "We died on the trail, 2019, flash flood in Tennessee. Our bodies were never recovered, but we were so close to finishing, only had 400 miles left. We couldn't let it end like that." Ryan felt cold spreading through his body. "You're ghosts." "Echoes," Compass corrected. "We're still hiking. Every night we appear at shelters trying to finish, but we can't make progress. We show up, we hike, we appear somewhere else, but we're not actually moving. We're just echoing our final months over and over." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you can see us, most people can't. You're sensitive to echoes, which means you're at risk of becoming one." Ryan stood up to leave. Compass called after him. "Listen to us. Shelter echoes happen to hikers who die before finishing. Their consciousness keeps hiking, keeps trying to complete the trail. They appear at shelters, interact with other hikers, but they're not really there. They're stuck in a loop trying to finish a hike that ended with their death." "I'm not dead," Ryan said. "Not yet. But you're vulnerable to becoming an echo. The fact that you can see us means you're halfway between physical and echo. You need to be careful." Ryan left the shelter and camped in the woods that night, but he couldn't stop thinking about Compass and Sparrow. He researched shelter echo legends online, found scattered reports of hikers encountering others who didn't leave physical traces, who appeared and disappeared, who seemed to be hiking but never made progress. One forum post from 2020 described an encounter with a couple named Compass and Sparrow who'd claimed to be through hiking but never signed shelter logs. The poster had investigated and found that 2 hikers with those trail names had died in 2019 during a flash flood. Their bodies were swept away and never recovered. According to friends, they'd been only 400 miles from finishing their through hike. Ryan found news articles about the flood. Photos showed the victims. Compass and Sparrow looked exactly as Ryan had seen them. The article mentioned they'd been hiking for 4 months, starting in March, aiming for a summer finish. All details matched what they'd told Ryan. He was interacting with dead hikers, echoes of people who died 4 years ago but were still trying to finish their through hike. Over the next week, Ryan encountered more echoes. A solo hiker who appeared at shelters but never ate, never slept, just sat staring at maps. A group of 3 who hiked together, talking animatedly, but their conversation was the same every time, looping identically. An elderly man who claimed to be section hiking but had been wearing the same muddy clothes for what must have been months. Ryan realized the Appalachian Trail was populated by shelter echoes. Hikers who died before completing their journeys, their consciousness trapped in repeating patterns, appearing at shelters, interacting with the living, trying endlessly to finish hikes that could never be completed. He started recognizing them. Echoes didn't eat real food. They never changed clothes. They repeated information exactly like recordings. They appeared and disappeared without logical travel time, and they never ever made it to their destination. They just kept hiking, kept appearing, kept trying. At a shelter in New Hampshire, Ryan met an echo who understood what he was. A hiker named Michael who died in 2003, still trying to reach Katahdin 20 years later. "I appear at shelters every few days," Michael said. "I hike what feels like normal days, but I never get closer to the end. I've been hiking for 20 years and haven't made progress. I'm stuck in the final 500 miles, echoing forever. Why can't you finish? Because I'm dead. My body is somewhere in these mountains. My consciousness is still hiking, but it's not connected to physical reality. I'm an echo in the trail system, doomed to repeat my final days forever." Ryan asked how many echoes were on the trail. Michael didn't know exactly. "Dozens, probably. Everyone who died before finishing becomes an echo. We're all trapped in our final miles, appearing at shelters, hiking endlessly, never reaching the end. How do I avoid becoming one? Don't die on the trail, that's the only way. If you die before finishing, you'll echo like us, trapped in the shelters, interacting with living hikers, trying forever to complete a journey that ended with your death." Ryan hiked more carefully after that. He avoided risks, didn't push through dangerous weather, didn't take chances with river crossings or steep climbs. He couldn't shake the fear that one mistake would trap him as an echo, hiking forever without progress, appearing at shelters for decades, trying endlessly to finish. He reached Katahdin on October 8th, summited in clear weather, touched the sign, and felt overwhelming relief. He'd finished. He wouldn't become an echo. But on his way down, Ryan encountered Compass and Sparrow one last time. They were hiking up, still wearing the same clothes, still carrying the same packs, still trying to reach the summit. "We'll make it this time," Compass said when we're so close. Ryan watched them climb higher. He knew they'd never reach the top. They'd get close, maybe even touch the sign, but it wouldn't count. They were echoes, trapped in their final miles, doomed to climb Katahdin forever without ever truly finishing. Ryan completed his hike and left the trail, but he can't forget the echoes. He sees them sometimes in his dreams. Compass and Sparrow at Partnership Shelter. Michael still trying to reach Katahdin 20 years after dying. The solo hiker staring at maps. The group of 3 repeating the same conversation endlessly. The Appalachian Trail preserves its dead, not their bodies, but their intentions. Every hiker who dies before finishing becomes a shelter echo, appearing at shelters, hiking sections, trying desperately to complete the journey. They don't know they're dead. They think they're making progress, but they're trapped in loops, repeating their final days, interacting with living hikers who usually can't see them. If you thru-hike the AT and encounter hikers who don't leave physical traces, who repeat information exactly, who never seem to reach their destination, you're seeing shelter echoes. Be kind to them. They're trying to finish what they started. They just don't know it's impossible. They died on the trail, and the trail kept their souls, put them in an eternal loop of hiking and shelters and attempts to finish. And if you can see them clearly, if you can interact with them easily, be very careful. You're sensitive to echoes, which means you're vulnerable to becoming one. Finish your hike safely. Don't die before Katahdin, because if you do, you'll join the echoes. You'll appear at shelters for decades, hiking endlessly, trying forever to complete a journey that ended the moment you died. The trail never forgets its hikers. It keeps them, preserves them, turns them into echoes that walk its length forever, trying to finish, never succeeding, trapped in the final miles for eternity. Story 6, the clean section. Amber Richardson was a week into her section hike through North Carolina when she noticed the trail was too clean. Not clean in the normal sense of well-maintained. Clean like it had been sanitized. No leaves on the trail surface, no spiderwebs across the path. No mud, no roots breaking through, no natural debris. At first, Amber appreciated it. Easy hiking, no obstacles, smooth surface. But by the second day, in what she mentally termed the clean section, the wrongness became undeniable. The trail looked vacuum-sealed, artificially sterile, like someone was constantly sweeping and sanitizing behind her. She stopped and examined the trail surface carefully. The dirt was packed perfectly smooth. No animal tracks, no insect activity, no decomposing leaves. The trail looked like it had been chemically treated. Amber knelt and touched the ground. Her fingers came away completely clean. No dust, no dirt transfer at all. She looked at the trees beside the trail. Normal forest, leaves and bark, and natural growth. But the trail itself was a sterile stripe through the woods, like a hallway floor in a hospital. Amber hiked on, disturbed but curious. At a shelter that evening, she mentioned the clean trail to another hiker, a through hiker named Scott. "Oh God, you're in it," Scott said. "In what?" "The clean section. Some people hike through it and never notice. Others like us see it clearly. The trail gets too clean, unnaturally clean. And the more you notice it, the worse it gets." Scott explained that he'd entered the clean section 3 days ago. At first it was just a lack of leaves, then the spiderwebs disappeared, then the dirt became too smooth. Now he was seeing things that shouldn't be possible. "Watch tonight," Scott said. "After dark, you'll see them." Amber didn't know what them meant, but she stayed awake after Scott went to sleep. At 2 a.m. she heard sounds outside the shelter, brushing sounds, sweeping sounds. Amber turned on her headlamp and looked out. There was nothing visible, but the trail was being cleaned. She could see the leaves disappearing, the dirt being smoothed, the spiderwebs dissolving. Invisible forces were sanitizing the trail in real time, maintaining the unnatural cleanliness. Amber watched for an hour. The cleaning was systematic and thorough. Every natural element that encroached on the trail was removed, leaves pushed aside, roots somehow smoothed over. Even rocks seemed to be polished. The trail was being maintained by something invisible, something obsessive, something that wouldn't tolerate any imperfection. In the morning, Amber asked Scott what was doing this. "Nobody knows, but it's been happening for years in this section. Hikers report the trail getting progressively cleaner until it becomes unnatural. Some people say it's trail maintenance taken to an extreme. Others think it's some kind of phenomenon, like the trail is cleaning itself. Why? Maybe the trail doesn't want to be dirty. Maybe it's conscious somehow and this section is trying to maintain itself. Or maybe something else is maintaining it for reasons we don't understand." Over the next 3 days, the clean section got worse. The trail became so smooth it was slippery. The dirt looked polished. The trees beside the trail started to change. Bark became smooth. Branches were trimmed into perfect shapes. The forest itself was being sanitized. Amber noticed her gear was getting clean too. Her boots, which should have been caked with mud, were spotless. Her pack, dirty from weeks of hiking, looked new. Even her clothes were being cleaned overnight. She'd go to sleep in sweat-stained, dirty hiking clothes and wake up wearing what looked like freshly laundered gear. Scott's condition was worse. He'd been in the clean section longer. His gear was pristine, looking like it had never been used. His skin was unnaturally smooth, all his scars and blemishes gone. Even his hair looked professionally styled, despite weeks without a shower. "It's cleaning me," Scott said, "not just my gear, me. My body is being sanitized. I've lost 3 pounds, but it's not weight loss. It's like dirt and impurities are being removed from inside me." Amber checked herself. She'd lost weight too. Her skin did look cleaner than it should. Her fingernails were perfectly trimmed, though she hadn't cut them. Something was sanitizing her body while she slept. At the next shelter, they found another hiker who'd been in the clean section for a week. A woman named Jenna who looked artificial. Her skin was too smooth, her hair too perfect, her clothes looked like they'd never been worn. She moved stiffly, like a mannequin. "It's cleaning everything," Jenna said. Her voice sounded odd, too precise. "The trail, the forest, us. It won't stop until everything is perfectly clean. I can feel it working inside me. Removing bacteria, removing natural oils, removing everything that makes me human and dirty." Jenna showed them her hands. The skin was so smooth it looked plastic. Her fingertips had no prints worn away or cleaned away. Her eyes had no bloodshot lines, no natural variation in color. She looked like a computer-generated person, too perfect to be real. "I'm being cleaned out of existence," Jenna said. "Eventually I'll be so clean that I'll disappear. Pure, empty. Nothing left to clean because nothing will remain." Amber tried to leave the clean section. She hiked fast, pushing to reach the boundaries. But the clean zone was expanding. Every mile she hiked forward, the clean trail extended. The forest was being sanitized ahead of her, the clean section growing. She tried bushwhacking out, leaving the trail entirely. But when she stepped off the trail, the cleaning followed her. The forest around her started becoming sterile. Leaves disappeared, bark smoothed, undergrowth vanished. The cleaning was following her, spreading into the forest wherever she went. Amber returned to the trail, afraid she was contaminating the entire forest with the cleaning phenomenon. Scott and Jenna were still at the shelter, both deteriorating. Scott's skin had become translucent. Amber could see through his hands like he was made of glass. Jenna was barely visible, her body so clean that it was fading from reality. "We're being purified," Jenna said, her voice barely audible. "All the dirt, all the imperfection, all the humanity being cleaned away. Soon we'll be pure, empty, perfect, nothing." That night, Jenna disappeared. Not left the shelter, but literally vanished. Amber watched it happen. Jenna's body became progressively more transparent, more clean, more perfect, until there was nothing left. She'd been completely sanitized, cleaned out of existence. Scott panicked. He tried to make himself dirty, rolling in mud, rubbing dirt into his skin. But the cleaning was too strong. Within minutes, the mud was gone, the dirt removed, his skin even cleaner than before. Every attempt to add imperfection was immediately reversed. Amber tried a different approach. She deliberately injured herself, cutting her arm with a knife. The blood flowed normally at first, then stopped. The wound cleaned itself, the cut sealing, the blood disappearing. Within 5 minutes, there was no trace of the injury. Her arm was perfectly smooth, the skin too clean, any sign of damage sanitized away. "It won't let us be imperfect," Amber said. It's cleaning away injury, dirt, anything that mars the perfect surface. Scott started crying, but no tears fell. His eyes were too clean for tears. His ducts had been sanitized. He tried to speak, but his voice was fading, becoming too pure to carry sound. By morning, Scott was barely visible. His body was translucent, his features smoothed into blank perfection. He looked at Amber one last time and mouthed words she couldn't hear. Then he was gone, cleaned out of existence, purified into nothing. Amber ran. She hiked 20 miles that day, trying to outpace the cleaning. But she could feel it working inside her. Her digestion stopped because her digestive system was being cleaned. Her sweat glands shut down because sweat was impurity. Her hair stopped growing because growth was imperfection. She reached a town and tried to get help, but the people in town backed away from her. She looked wrong, too clean, too smooth, too perfect. Her skin had no pores, her clothes had no wrinkles, her gear showed no wear. She looked like a photograph of a person, not an actual human. Amber checked into a motel and examined herself in a mirror. She was disappearing. Her features were being cleaned away, smoothed into blank perfection. Her eyes were losing their unique characteristics. Her fingerprints were gone. Any mark that made her individual was being sanitized. She tried to leave permanent marks, wrote her name on her arm with permanent marker. The ink disappeared within seconds, cleaned away. Tattooed herself with a needle and ink. The tattoo faded immediately, the imperfection removed by the cleaning force. Amber's journal from that night is barely legible. Her handwriting was being cleaned, becoming too perfect to be recognizable as writing. The final entry reads, "The cleaning won't stop. It's inside me now, removing everything that makes me human, all the bacteria, all the natural imperfection, all the dirt that life creates. I'm being purified, made clean, made empty. Soon there will be nothing left to clean. I'll be perfectly pure, perfectly nothing." Amber Richardson was never seen again. Her motel room was found empty. Her gear was there, perfectly clean, perfectly organized, perfectly preserved. But Amber herself was gone. The staff said the room was the cleanest they'd ever seen. No dust, no dirt, no human trace, like no one had ever stayed there. The clean section of the Appalachian Trail continues to expand. It grows a few miles each year, encompassing more trail, more forest, more hikers. People who enter it report trails that are too perfect, forests that are too clean, and their own bodies being sanitized from the inside out. Some hikers make it through without noticing. They walk the clean trail and experience nothing. But others, those sensitive to wrongness, feel the cleaning working on them. They see their scars fade, their imperfections smooth away, their humanity being sanitized. And a few, like Amber and Scott and Jenna, stay too long. They get completely cleaned, purified out of existence, made so perfect that they disappear entirely, leaving behind only gear that's too clean to have ever been used. If you hike the AT and notice the trail is too perfect, leave immediately. Get dirty, roll in mud. Embrace imperfection, because the clean section doesn't want dirty hikers. It wants to sanitize, purify. Clean away all imperfection until nothing remains. And if you let it work on you too long, you'll become what it wants. Perfectly clean, perfectly pure, perfectly nothing. Story 7. The Repeating Storm. Gabriel Simmons was 3 days into the Grayson Highlands section of the AT in Virginia when the storm started. Dark clouds rolled in around noon, followed by heavy rain and lightning. Gabriel took shelter under a rocky overhang, waiting for the storm to pass. The rain lasted exactly 18 minutes. Gabriel timed it, 12:14 p.m. to 12:32 p.m. The clouds cleared suddenly, the sun emerged, and the trail steamed in the heat. Gabriel continued hiking, his clothes drying as he walked. 3 hours later, at 3:32 p.m., the same storm happened again. Gabriel recognized the cloud formations identical to before, The rain fell in the same pattern, same intensity. Lightning struck the same trees. He timed it again, 18 minutes exactly. 3:32 p.m. to 3:50 p.m. Gabriel checked his weather app. No storm system was showing in the area. The forecast was for clear skies all day. But he just experienced two identical storms, 3 hours apart. At 6:50 p.m. the storm came again. Same clouds, same rain pattern, same lightning strikes. Gabriel stood in the rain this time, watching it carefully. The storm was identical. Every detail matched the previous occurrences. The same sequence of lightning strikes hitting the same trees in the same order. The same wind patterns, the same rainfall intensity curve, building to a peak and declining. The storm ended at 7:08 p.m. 18 minutes. Gabriel checked his GPS and marked the location. He wanted to see if the storm was geographically locked or if it followed him. He hiked on as darkness fell. At 10:08 p.m. the storm started again. Gabriel was 2 miles from where he'd experienced the last occurrence. The storm had followed him. It wasn't a location-based loop. It was following Gabriel specifically, repeating every 3 hours. He camped that night and set an alarm for 1:08 a.m. When it went off, he watched the storm begin. Exactly on time. The same clouds, the same rain. Gabriel sat in his tent listening to the identical 18-minute storm play out in darkness. In the morning, Gabriel was exhausted. The storm had repeated through the night. 1:08 a.m., 4:08 a.m., 7:08 a.m. Always 3 hours apart, always 18 minutes long, always identical in every detail. At a shelter later that day, Gabriel met another hiker named David. He asked if David had experienced the repeating storm. David looked confused. What storm? It's been clear weather for 2 days. The storm that happens every 3 hours. I haven't seen any storms. Gabriel showed David his wet gear, his soaked tent, his rain-logged journal. David examined the items carefully. Your gear is dry, David said. There's no water damage. Your journal isn't wet. Gabriel looked at his stuff. David was right. Everything appeared dry. But Gabriel had clear memories of being soaked repeatedly by the storm. He'd felt the rain, heard the thunder, seen the lightning. But the physical evidence didn't support his experience. David suggested Gabriel might be experiencing dehydration hallucinations. Gabriel disagreed. The storms were too consistent, too detailed, but he agreed to hike with David to see if the phenomenon continued. At 1:08 p.m., the storm happened again. Gabriel stood in the rain, pointing at the clouds, describing the lightning. David stood beside him in apparently clear weather, seeing nothing. You're standing in bright sunshine, David said. There's no storm. I'm being rained on right now. David reached out and touched Gabriel's jacket. You're completely dry. Gabriel, there's no rain. But Gabriel could feel the rain, heavy drops soaking through his clothes. He could see the dark clouds, hear the thunder. The storm was happening to him, but not to anyone else. They continued hiking together. Every 3 hours, Gabriel experienced an 18-minute storm. David experienced clear weather. Gabriel would stop and wait out the storm. David would wait with him, seeing no reason for the pause but staying for companionship. Other hikers they encountered reported the same thing. Clear weather, no storms. But every 3 hours, Gabriel was trapped in an identical 18-minute storm that only he could perceive. On the third day of the repeating storm, Gabriel noticed something new. He was getting wet now. Actually wet in the physical sense. His clothes were soaked, his gear was dripping, his skin was cold. David confirmed it. You're drenched, David said, but I'm watching you and there's no rain. It's like you're being sprayed with water by an invisible source. Gabriel checked his journal. The pages were genuinely wet now, ink smearing. The storm was becoming more real, manifesting physically even as it remained invisible to others. By the fifth day, the repeating storm was affecting Gabriel's body temperature. He was experiencing hypothermia symptoms despite hiking in summer heat. His core temperature was dropping during each 18-minute storm cycle. David had to warm him with emergency blankets after each episode. "You're going into hypothermia from a storm I can't see," David said. "Your body is responding to rain and cold that don't exist for anyone but you. You need to get off the trail." But Gabriel wanted to understand the phenomenon. He started documenting everything. He filmed the storms with his phone. The videos showed clear weather, but Gabriel's reflection in puddles showed him standing in rain. The audio recorded thunder and rain sounds, but visually there was nothing. Gabriel found shelter logs describing similar experiences. A 2015 entry. "Trapped in a personal storm. Happens every 3 hours. 18 minutes of rain that only I can see. Getting weaker. Please help." Another entry from 2018. "The storm won't stop. It's been repeating for 2 weeks. I'm always wet, always cold. The rain is real for me, but no one else sees it. I think I'm going to die from exposure in the middle of summer." Gabriel researched repeating storm phenomena. He found scattered reports going back decades, hikers trapped in personal weather patterns, storms that followed individuals repeating on precise schedules visible only to the affected person but having real physical effects. One theory suggested these were temporal loops. The hiker had experienced a real storm at some point, and their consciousness was trapped in that 18-minute period, repeating it endlessly. The storm wasn't happening in present time. It was an echo from the past playing over and over. Another theory proposed dimensional bleeding. The hiker existed partially in a different version of reality where the storm was actually happening. They were experiencing weather from an alternate dimension, invisible to people fully anchored in normal reality. Gabriel tried everything to stop the storm. He left the trail, went to a town, stayed in a motel. The storm continued. Every 3 hours, 18 minutes of rain and lightning affecting only him. Hotel staff watched him get soaked in his room while they saw clear conditions. He went to a hospital. Doctors examined him and found genuine hypothermia, genuine exposure symptoms, but they couldn't explain it. Gabriel's body was responding to environmental conditions that instruments couldn't detect. A psychiatrist suggested this was a somatic hallucination, a mental condition causing real physical symptoms. But that didn't explain the videos that recorded storm sounds or the fact that other people could see Gabriel getting wet from an invisible source. Gabriel returned to the trail, resigned to living with the repeating storm. David had moved on, but Gabriel hiked alone, stopping every 3 hours for his 18-minute storm, getting soaked and cold, then drying out and warming up before the next cycle. The storm began to change. The lightning strikes came closer, thunder got louder, the rain became hail. What had been an inconvenient phenomenon was becoming actively dangerous. On day 30, Gabriel was struck by lightning from his personal storm, a bolt that David, hiking nearby, never saw. Gabriel collapsed, his body showing burn patterns, his heart rhythm irregular. David called for emergency evacuation. In the hospital, Gabriel continued experiencing the storm every 3 hours. Nurses watched him convulse as invisible lightning struck him repeatedly. Doctors couldn't prevent or treat something they couldn't see. Gabriel's condition deteriorated. Each 3-hour cycle brought more severe weather. The storm was intensifying, becoming more dangerous. What had started as rain was now a severe thunderstorm, with damaging winds and repeated lightning strikes. On day 37, during a 2:08 a.m. storm cycle, Gabriel died. Nurses reported he convulsed, his body arcing as if electrocuted, though all monitors showed no electrical activity. When the 18-minute period ended at 2:26 a.m., Gabriel was dead. Cause of death: cardiac arrest consistent with lightning strike. But the hospital room showed no signs of electrical discharge. Gabriel's autopsy revealed extensive internal injuries consistent with repeated lightning strikes and severe exposure. His body showed patterns of hypothermia, frostbite, and electrical burns, injuries that had accumulated over 37 days of repeating storms that no one else could see. The phenomenon continues to be reported on the AT. Hikers trapped in personal weather patterns, storms that repeat every 3 hours, 18 minutes long, visible only to the affected individual. Some escape by leaving the trail quickly. Others, like Gabriel, stay too long and experience escalating severity until the repeating storm kills them. Meteorologists can't explain it. The storms don't appear on radar, don't follow atmospheric patterns, don't obey normal weather rules. They're locked to individuals, following them regardless of location, repeating on precise schedules. One theory is that these hikers walked through a real storm at the exact moment it was occurring and somehow got trapped in that moment temporally. Their consciousness keeps reliving those 18 minutes, and the reliving becomes physically real, manifesting as an actual storm that affects only them. If you start experiencing a storm that repeats on a precise schedule, leave the trail immediately. Don't try to understand it. Don't try to document it. Just get to a hospital and hope it stops. Because the repeating storm gets worse over time. The weather intensifies, the danger increases, and eventually the storm kills you. You'll die from exposure in summer heat, struck by lightning no one else can see, frozen by rain that only touches you. Killed by weather that exists in a private dimension where you're trapped, reliving 18 minutes forever until the storm you're caught in finally kills you, just like it was always going to, again and again, every 3 hours, forever. Story 8. The Pace Thief. Lauren Keating was a fast hiker. She'd always been athletic, and on the Appalachian Trail she maintained speeds that left other thru hikers behind. While most hikers averaged 2 to 3 miles per hour, Lauren consistently hit 4 miles per hour on flat sections, 3 on climbs. She covered 25 to 30 miles most days, making excellent progress. On May 18th, somewhere in Tennessee, Lauren's pace changed. She didn't notice at first. She felt like she was hiking normally, legs moving at their usual rhythm, breath steady. But when she checked her GPS at lunch, she'd only covered 4 miles in 3 hours. Less than 1.5 miles per hour. Lauren assumed she'd misread the distance or taken wrong turns. She pushed harder in the afternoon, feeling like she was nearly running, her legs pumping fast, heart rate elevated. She hiked for another 4 hours until she had to stop from exhaustion. Her GPS showed she'd covered 5 miles, just over 1 mile per hour, despite hiking faster than ever before. Lauren checked her GPS for malfunctions. The device showed correct positions, proper satellite connection, accurate waypoints. Her elevation gain matched the terrain. Everything was functioning correctly except the distance measurements. At the next shelter, Lauren asked other hikers how far they'd come that day. A hiker named Marcus said he'd done 18 miles. He'd started from the same shelter as Lauren that morning. She'd done 9 miles, hiking significantly faster than Marcus. Something was wrong. Lauren checked her step count on her fitness tracker. 47,283 steps. At her average stride length, that should equal about 22 miles, but her GPS showed 9 miles. Her steps weren't translating into distance. She was walking normally, but covering far less ground than she should. Over the next 3 days, Lauren's effective speed dropped further. She'd hike all day, legs moving constantly, fitness tracker recording 50,000 plus steps, but she'd cover only 6 or 7 miles. Her stride wasn't shrinking. She was taking full-length steps, but each step seemed to move her forward less distance. Other hikers began passing her. People she'd left behind days ago caught up and moved ahead. Lauren would be hiking fast, breathing hard, moving quickly, and slower hikers would overtake her like she was standing still. "Are you okay?" A hiker named Sophie asked, easily walking past Lauren despite Lauren's feeling like she was practically running. "I'm hiking as fast as I can." "You're barely moving. You look like you're trying hard, but you're going maybe half a mile an hour." Lauren checked her GPS. Sophie was right. Despite feeling like she was hiking at maximum speed, GPS showed her creeping along at 0.6 miles per hour. Lauren tried sprinting. She ran at full speed for 10 minutes, heart pounding, legs burning. Her GPS showed she'd moved 0.2 miles. At sprinting speed, she'd covered what should take 4 minutes of normal walking. Something was stealing her pace. Every step she took was being compressed, shortened, made less effective. She was walking normal stride lengths, but each step was covering less ground. At a trail town, Lauren went to an outfitter and asked to be filmed on a treadmill. She ran at what felt like a 7-minute mile pace. The video showed her moving. Her form looked normal. Her speed appeared correct. But the treadmill's distance counter barely moved. After running for 30 minutes at what felt like fast pace, the treadmill showed she'd covered 0.7 miles. The store owner was baffled. "You're running. Your stride looks normal, but the distance isn't accumulating. It's like you're running in place while moving forward. You're covering distance, but not as much as your movement should create." Lauren researched pace theft phenomena. She found scattered reports of hikers experiencing progressive pace reduction. They'd hike normally but cover less ground each day. Their steps stopped translating into distance. Eventually, they'd be walking at full speed but making no forward progress at all. One account from 2016 described a hiker named James who experienced pace theft over 2 weeks. By the end, he was hiking 16 hours a day, legs moving constantly but covering only 2 miles. His steps had become almost meaningless. He'd walk a full stride and move forward maybe 2 inches. The account said James eventually stopped moving entirely. He'd walk for hours, legs pumping, but stay in exactly the same position. His steps had been compressed to 0 distance. He was walking without traveling. Lauren's pace continued deteriorating. By week 2 of the phenomenon, she was covering 3 miles in 8-hour hiking days. By week 3, she was down to 1 mile per day. Her legs moved normally, her stride length was unchanged, but each step moved her forward only inches. Other hikers reported seeing her. Lauren was hiking hard, looked exhausted, but she wasn't really going anywhere. We'd pass her and look back 5 minutes later and she'd still be at the same spot, legs moving like she was walking, but stationary. Lauren tried everything. She shortened her stride, thinking maybe smaller steps would be more effective. No change. She lengthened her stride, taking huge, exaggerated steps. Still no difference. She tried walking sideways, backwards, crawling. Nothing worked. Every movement was being compressed, translated into less and less actual distance. She consulted a physicist who studied motion in space. He had a theory that Lauren was experiencing spatial compression. The space in front of her was somehow condensing. Each step she took was normal length in her reference frame, but the space itself was compressed, so normal strides covered compressed distance. Imagine walking on a treadmill where the belt is moving backwards, the physicist explained. You're walking forward normally, but the ground is moving backwards relative to you. The net distance is less than your actual movement. Something similar might be happening to you, but with space itself rather than a moving surface. How do I fix it? I don't know. If space is actually compressing around you, that's beyond current physics. You'd need to either leave the affected area or somehow reverse the compression. Lauren tried leaving the trail. She hiked off the AT into unmarked forest. But the pace theft followed her. Wherever she went, her steps covered less and less distance. The compression was attached to her, not to a specific location. By day 30, Lauren could barely move forward at all. She'd hike for an hour and advance maybe 50 feet. Her fitness tracker recorded thousands of steps, but GPS showed trivial distance. Each individual step moved her forward perhaps 1 inch. Other hikers would stop and watch her. Lauren walking hard, breathing heavily, legs pumping but barely moving. Like a video in extreme slow motion, except her movement speed was normal. Only her forward progress was slowed. Lauren's last journal entry dated June 27th. Can't make progress anymore. I've been hiking for 6 hours today and moved maybe 20 feet. Each step is less than an inch of forward distance. Tomorrow I probably won't move at all. I'll walk in place. My steps will be compressed to 0 distance. I'll hike forever without traveling, trapped in motion that goes nowhere. Lauren Keating is still on the trail. Rangers have seen her. A woman walking hard, looking exhausted, legs moving constantly. But she's always in the same location. She's been walking in that exact spot for 8 months. Her steps have been compressed to 0 distance. She walks without traveling, hikes without progress, moves without going anywhere. Rescue teams have tried to reach her, but she's in difficult terrain. And when they get close, they report feeling their own steps becoming compressed. Getting close to Lauren seems to transfer the pace theft. Several rangers have reported walking toward her for hours but making no forward progress, their own steps becoming less effective. Lauren is trapped in motion. Her body walks continuously, her mind presumably still trying to reach Katadine, but her position never changes. She's stuck at the same GPS coordinates, walking endlessly, her pace stolen completely. The phenomenon has been reported by other hikers. Progressive pace reduction, steps covering less distance until eventually movement stops translating into travel. Most victims quit the trail early when they first noticed the compression. Lauren stayed too long, hiking until her pace was reduced to 0. If you start hiking fast but covering little distance, if your steps seem less effective than they should be, leave the trail immediately. The pace theft gets progressively worse. Each day your steps will cover less ground. Your stride will compress. Eventually, if you don't leave, you'll stop making forward progress entirely. You'll walk forever without traveling, trapped in perpetual motion that goes nowhere. Your legs will move, your body will hike, but you'll stay in the same location. Hiking the Appalachian Trail but never advancing, never reaching your destination. Stuck in eternal walking that covers 0 distance. Like Lauren, who's still out there, still hiking, still trying to reach Maine. But she's been in the same spot for 8 months and she'll be there forever, walking in place, her pace stolen completely, motion without progress, hiking that never ends because it never begins. Story 9. The increasing weight. Terrence Blake had been through hiking for 2 months when his pack started getting heavier. Not from adding gear. His pack weight had been consistent at 22 pounds, carefully optimized over years of hiking experience. But around mile 1000 in Pennsylvania, his pack felt heavier each day. At first, Terrence thought it was fatigue. 2 months of hiking would make anyone feel tired. But when he weighed his pack at a hostel, the scale showed 43 pounds. He dumped everything out and weighed each item individually. The total came to 22 pounds. But when he packed everything back and weighed the full pack, it showed 43 pounds. The individual items weighed correctly, but the assembled pack weighed almost twice as much as the sum of its contents. Terrence tried different scales. All showed the same thing. Individual items, 22 pounds total. Assembled pack, 43 pounds. The pack was somehow gaining weight when items were combined inside it. Over the next week, the pack got heavier. Same contents, same individual weights, but the assembled pack climbed to 50 pounds, then 60 pounds, then 70 pounds. Terrence's shoulders ached. His back hurt. He was hiking with the difficulty of carrying 70 pounds while actually carrying only 22 pounds of gear. Other hikers noticed his struggle. A thru hiker named Emily asked if Terrence was carrying rocks. He showed her his gear spread out for inspection. Every item was lightweight, carefully chosen. Emily weighed the individual items and confirmed they totaled 22 pounds. Then she helped Terrence repack. When they weighed the full pack, it showed 82 pounds. "That's impossible," Emily said. "I just watched you pack 22 pounds of gear. The pack itself weighs 1 pound. Where's the extra 60 pounds? Terrence had no explanation. The weight wasn't physically present, but it was real. His body felt every pound. His shoulders showed deep grooves from the pack straps. His posture was bent from the load. He was physically carrying 82 pounds, but only 22 pounds of actual material was in the pack. He tried a different pack. Same problem. Purchased a new pack, transferred all his gear. The new pack weighed correctly at first, 23 pounds total, but after an hour of hiking it felt heavier. He weighed it at the next road crossing, 51 pounds. The weight was transferring to whatever pack he used. Or maybe the weight was attaching to him and the pack was just where he felt it most. Terrence researched weight gain phenomena on the trail. He found a few scattered reports. Hikers whose packs became progressively heavier despite not adding gear. The weight was always phantom, not measurable in individual items, but definitely present in the assembled load and in the physical effects on the hiker's body. One report from 2011 described a hiker whose pack reached 200 pounds of perceived weight while containing only 30 pounds of gear. The hiker had to quit at mile 1400, unable to carry the phantom load any further. Terrence's weight continued increasing. By day 75, his pack felt like 110 pounds. By day 80, it was 140 pounds. He was hiking only 8 miles per day now, stopping frequently to rest his shoulders and back. The phantom weight was destroying his ability to hike. At a shelter in New York, Terrence met an old thru hiker named Gene who'd completed the trail 5 times. Gene examined Terrence's pack and nodded knowingly. "You've got accumulation," Gene said. "Accumulation of what?" "The trail. Every step you take adds weight. Not physical weight, but trail weight. The miles accumulate in your pack. Every camp, every shelter, every summit. The trail is piling up on you. That doesn't make sense." "Sense isn't relevant. You're carrying the trail now, all 200 miles you've hiked. They're weighing you down. By the time you reach Katahdin, you'll be carrying the entire trail, 2,000 miles of weight on your back." Gene explained that some hikers accumulated trail weight. Their packs gained 1 phantom pound for every 10 miles hiked. It started around mile 1000 and progressed until the hiker quit or reached Katahdin. "I've never heard of anyone finishing with full accumulation," Gene said. "Most people quit by mile 1500, the weight becomes too much. You're at 200 miles, so you're carrying about 120 extra pounds. By mile 2000, you'd be carrying 200 phantom pounds plus your real gear weight. Nobody can hike with that load." Terrence asked if there was a way to remove the accumulated weight. Gene shook his head. "The trail doesn't give back what it takes. You're accumulating miles and they're staying with you. Only way to stop the accumulation is to stop hiking. But once you've started accumulating, it's usually too late. The weight stays even if you quit." Over the next 2 weeks, Terrence's pack became unbearable. The perceived weight reached 180 pounds. He could barely walk. His back screamed in pain. His shoulders were permanently bruised. He was effectively climbing mountains with a 180-pound pack, though his actual gear weighed 22 pounds. Other hikers would offer to carry some of his load, but when they picked up items from Terrence's pack, the items weighed normally. One person carried Terrence's sleeping bag and tent, reducing his real pack weight to 12 pounds, but the phantom weight remained. Terrence's shoulders still felt 180 pounds of pressure. The weight was tied to him specifically to his accumulation of miles. Transferring gear to others didn't help. The trail weight stayed with the hiker who'd accumulated it. By Vermont, Terrence was hiking 2 miles per day. The phantom weight had reached 210 pounds. He'd covered 1,400 miles, and each of those miles was weighing on him. He'd sit at shelters for hours, too exhausted to continue, his body crushed under weight that didn't physically exist but felt absolutely real. At a hospital in Vermont, doctors examined Terrence. X-rays showed compression fractures in his vertebrae consistent with carrying extreme loads. His shoulders had deep tissue damage. His legs showed signs of overuse far beyond what normal thru-hiking should cause. His body was experiencing the real physical effects of carrying 210 pounds, even though scales showed his pack at 22 pounds. Doctors advised him to quit hiking immediately. The phantom weight was causing actual injury. Terrence's spine was being compressed, his joints were deteriorating, his muscles were tearing. He was being destroyed by weight that shouldn't exist. Terrence quit his thru hike at mile 10450, but the weight didn't disappear. Off the trail, he still felt 215 pounds of pressure on his shoulders and back. Walking down streets, sitting in chairs, lying in bed, the accumulated trail weight stayed with him. He tried physical therapy. Doctors couldn't address the problem because they couldn't detect the weight. Terrence's body showed damage consistent with carrying extreme loads, but the load was invisible. Treatment focused on healing the damage, not removing the cause. 3 months after quitting the trail, Terrence still felt the accumulated weight, 215 pounds pressing down on him constantly. He walked bent over, his posture permanently damaged. He couldn't stand for long periods. Sitting provided little relief because the weight compressed his spine even when seated. Terrence contacted other hikers who'd experienced accumulation. He found 12 people. All reported the same thing. The weight never went away. Years after quitting the trail, they still felt the accumulated miles pressing down on them. One woman had quit 15 years ago at mile 1600. She still felt 160 phantom pounds on her back every moment of every day. "It's the cost of hiking that far," she told Terrence. "The trail takes something from you, makes you carry the miles you've walked. Some people finish despite it, but most can't. The weight becomes too much and you carry it forever, even after you leave." Terrence found one account of someone who'd finished a thru hike with full accumulation. A hiker in 2009 had reached Katahdin carrying what he estimated was 280 phantom pounds on top of his gear weight. The final climb up Katahdin had taken him 12 hours. He'd crawled the last section, unable to stand under the crushing weight. At the summit, the weight had supposedly disappeared. The moment he touched the Katahdin sign, all accumulated trail weight was released. He'd stood up feeling light as air, his pack suddenly weighing only the actual gear inside it. Finishing the full trail removed the accumulation. But Terrence was at mile 1450, carrying 215 phantom pounds with 740 miles remaining. To reach Katahdin, he'd need to hike with progressively increasing weight, ultimately carrying 280-plus pounds on his back. His body couldn't handle it. The compression fractures, the tissue damage, the joint deterioration. He'd be permanently crippled or dead before reaching Maine. Terrence lives with the weight now. He's adapted as much as possible, but the 215 phantom pounds never leaves. He feels it every moment. Invisible to others, unmeasurable by instruments, but absolutely real to him. The accumulated miles of the Appalachian Trail pressing down on his shoulders, compressing his spine, a constant reminder of the hike he couldn't finish. If you thru hike the AT and your pack starts feeling heavier without adding gear, quit immediately. You've started accumulating trail weight, and it will only get worse. Every mile you hike adds phantom pounds to your load. By mile 1500, you'll be carrying 150 extra pounds. By mile 2000, over 200 pounds. And if you quit before finishing, that weight stays with you forever. You'll carry the trail for the rest of your life, feeling the miles press down on you, crushing you under the weight of a journey you started but couldn't complete. The only release is finishing, touching the summit of Katahdin, completing all 2,190 miles. But most people can't make it that far. The accumulation becomes too much and they quit, and they carry that weight forever, haunted by miles they walked but didn't finish, crushed by a trail that won't let them go. Story 10. The Final White Blaze. Kimberly Ochoa was 20 miles from Katahdin when she encountered the final white blaze. Not the one at Baxter Peak, the official terminus. This blaze was different. It appeared on a tree 50 feet off the trail, glowing faintly, calling to her. Kimberly had been hiking since April, 5 months on the trail, 2,270 miles behind her, 20 miles ahead until she'd complete her through hike. She was exhausted, excited, emotional. The end was so close. But when she saw the off-trail blaze, something in her needed to investigate. It looked wrong. Brighter than normal blazes, positioned oddly, pulsing slightly like it had internal light. Kimberly left the trail and bushwhacked toward it. The tree was massive, old growth that shouldn't exist in this managed forest. The white blaze was painted at eye level, perfect dimensions, but the paint seemed to glow. Kimberly touched it and felt warmth. The paint was radiating heat. Below the blaze were words carved into the bark. "The real trail goes this way." Kimberly looked around. There was no trail, just forest and undergrowth. But when she focused, she could see faint blazes deeper in the woods. White rectangles on distant trees marking a path that diverged from the official AT. Every instinct told her to return to the White Blaze Trail and hike the final 20 miles to Katahdin. But curiosity was overwhelming. After 2,170 miles, what was 20 more to investigate? A mystery. Kimberly followed the off-trail blazes. They led deeper into the forest, through terrain no maintained trail should pass, over steep cliffs, through dense tangles, across swamps. But the blazes continued, always visible ahead, marking a path that seemed to exist despite impossible terrain. After 2 hours of bushwhacking, Kimberly emerged at another AT shelter. But this one wasn't on her maps. She checked her GPS. According to the device, she was 2 miles from the official trail in roadless wilderness. But here was a shelter, standard AT design with a privy and bare cables. The shelter log was recent, entries from last week, but the names were strange. Trail names Kimberly had never encountered. Recursion, Null, Forever, Again. Their entries were disturbing. Recursion, mile 2,290, reached Katahdin, started back south, found the real trail. Now I understand. Null. The official AT is just the surface. The real trail is underneath. Infinite miles, infinite finish lines, never really ends. Forever. I thought I finished, but the final blaze showed me there's more, always more. You never complete the trail. You just find deeper versions. Kimberly felt cold spreading through her chest. She left the shelter and tried to backtrack. But the blazes had disappeared. The path she'd followed didn't exist anymore. She was lost in forest with no trail markers, no GPS guidance, no way to return to the official AT. She bushwhacked in what should be the right direction. After an hour, she found white blazes again. But these blazes were black. Not painted black, but the absence of light. Black rectangles on trees that seemed to absorb light rather than reflect it. Kimberly followed the black blazes because she had no other option. They led to another shelter, identical to the previous one. The log contained more entries. Again, day 847 on the real trail. Still looking for the actual end. Keep finding false summits. Katahdin was just the beginning. Kimberly realized she'd found the real Appalachian Trail, not the official 2,190-mile footpath maintained by volunteers. The actual trail, the one underneath. The infinite version that spiraled through dimensions and had no terminus. The official AT was just an echo, a surface representation of the real trail that existed in layers below. Most hikers walked the echo and thought they'd completed the trail. But some people like Kimberly found the entrance to the real version. And once you entered, you couldn't leave. Kimberly tried to exit. She bushwhacked in every direction, looking for the official trail, for roads, for anything. But the infinite trail had captured her. Every direction led back to black blazes, to shelters not on maps, to a trail system that existed outside normal geography. She found other hikers, people who'd been on the real trail for years. A man named Derek who'd entered in 2016 and had been hiking the infinite layers ever since. A woman named Chantal who'd been walking for 9 years, trying to find the actual end. The official AT has a terminus, Derek explained, but the real trail doesn't. It just goes deeper. Every time you think you've reached the end, you find another layer. More miles, more blazes, more trail that goes on forever. They hiked together, following black blazes, then red blazes, then colors Kimberly had no names for. Each color represented a deeper layer of trail, further from the surface, further from escape. Kimberly's GPS stopped working after a week. Her phone couldn't find satellites. Time became difficult to track. Days blurred together. She'd hike what felt like weeks and check her journal to find only days had passed. Or hike for what felt like hours and discover months had elapsed. The infinite trail existed outside normal time. Hikers aged slowly or not at all. Derek looked the same age as his 2016 driver's license photo, despite claiming he'd been hiking for 7 years. Chantal couldn't remember her age anymore. The trail had taken her sense of time completely. They encountered shelters full of hikers who'd been on the infinite trail for decades. People who'd entered in the 1980s and were still walking, still looking for the end. Still following blazes that led to more blazes, more trail, more miles that never brought them closer to finishing. The real Appalachian Trail is infinite, a hiker named Thomas explained. He'd been walking since 1979. It spirals through layers of reality. Every color blazes a deeper layer. Most people never see beyond white. But once you see the deeper colors, you're trapped. You'll hike forever looking for the terminus that doesn't exist. Kimberly has been on the infinite trail for what she thinks is 3 years, though her journal suggests 8 months have passed. She's lost track of miles. Her step counter stopped working at 8 million steps. Her GPS shows her position as impossible coordinates, latitudes and longitudes outside Earth's normal range. She follows blazes that shift colors, that mark trails through impossible terrain, through forests that exist in multiple seasons simultaneously, through mountains that are both ascending and descending at once. The infinite trail doesn't follow normal geography or physics. It exists in spaces between, in layers underneath reality. Sometimes Kimberly encounters hikers she recognizes, people who finished the official AT years ago. They're on the infinite trail too, walking forever, having somehow fallen through the surface into the deeper layers. She's seen the final white blaze multiple times. It appears at what seems like endpoints, at the top of mountains, at the edge of forests. But touching it doesn't end the hike. It just reveals the next layer, the next set of blazes, the next infinite section. The official Appalachian Trail has a terminus, Katadin's Baxter Peak, but underneath is the real trail, the infinite version, the one that never ends because it exists in layers that spiral downward forever. Most hikers never see it. They walk the surface trail, touch the summit sign, and leave, never knowing the infinite trail exists below their feet. But some people, like Kimberly, find the entrance. They see blazes off the main trail, glowing marks that call to them. And if they follow, if they leave the surface trail to investigate, They fall into the infinite layers. They find the real Appalachian Trail, the one that has no end. The one that spirals through dimensions and time. The one you can never finish because finishing isn't possible when the trail goes on forever. Kimberly was 20 miles from completing a through hike. Now she's thousands of miles from anything, walking an infinite trail through layers of reality, following blazes that lead to more blazes, hiking toward an end that doesn't exist. If you through hike the AT and see blazes off the official trail, don't investigate, don't follow, don't leave the white blazed path. Those off-trail blazes are entrances to the infinite trail, and once you enter, you'll hike forever, walking through layers that never end, following marks that lead nowhere, trying to complete a trail that's only purpose is to continue. Kimberly's still out there, somewhere in the infinite layers, 20 miles from a finish line she'll never reach. Walking forever on the real Appalachian Trail that exists underneath the one everyone thinks they've completed.